CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
RCMP in Nanaimo are now involved in that troubling case of animal abuse we first showed you last night, the one that's troubling cat owners. Somebody is terrorizing cats in the Brecon neighborhood, wrapping them in duct tape. The first incident happened October 1st. The owner found the cat crying, trying to lick the tape off its paws and tail. At about the same time, her neighbor's cat came home wrapped in duct tape. And then it happened again yesterday morning as the woman rushed her cat to the vet to cut the tape off. She says she's afraid of what might happen next.
And I feel concerned for my children. I think these people have gone too far.
It was obviously in distress by the way it was chewing at its feet. I mean, they use their tail for balance. To have it taped against their body, it certainly wouldn't be very comfortable for the cat. And when we removed it, you can see certainly a substantial amount of hair has to get pulled out, which wouldn't feel very good.
The RCMP are now investigating. They hope to find whoever is responsible before another neighborhood cat is targeted.
In this particular case, it's actually defined under the criminal code as unnecessary suffering to an animal. So we're certainly following up on that. And because the homeowner came to us, there's a concern to stop this before it escalates. We're working closely with the SPCA, who's been involved since the first incident, and comparing notes and see what we can go and where this file will take us.
Police say if there's an arrest, animal cruelty charges could be laid. If you know anything about this or who's doing it, you're asked to contact Nanaimo RCMP or make an anonymous tip to Crime Stoppers. The former deputy commander of an Army Cadet Corps in Victoria has been convicted on sex charges involving two teenagers. A court-martial at CFB Esquimalt has found Captain Daniel Moriarty guilty of sexual exploitation, sexual interference, sexual assault, and behaving in a disgraceful manner. A 15-year-old boy and 16-year-old girl were assaulted in separate incidents between 2008 and 2011 at the Ashton Armory in Saanich and the Army camp in Vernon. Moriarty is the former deputy commanding officer of the Victoria Army Cadet Signals Corps. He'll be in court for sentencing on October 31st. A View Royal man who pleaded guilty to manslaughter learned his fate in a Victoria courtroom today. Jason Van Winkle was sentenced for his role in the 2011 death of a man at a low-income housing project in Rock Bay. CFAX 1070 reporter Kyle Reynolds was in the courthouse this afternoon.
Hudson, Jason Van Winkle has been sentenced to 3.5 years behind bars for manslaughter. With time served, the 37-year-old View Royal man will spend just under 3 years in prison. The sentence stems from the death of 41-year-old Jill Thibodeau at a Rock Bay housing project in 2011. Today's sentencing hearing heard that Van Winkle and Thibodeau were using drugs the night of the incident, and Van Winkle attacked the victim unprovoked following an argument over a missing key. Thibodeau later died in hospital. Hudson.
CFAX 1070's Kyle Reynolds reporting. Kyle, thank you. Two Victoria police officers are being hailed as heroes tonight after rescuing a woman who was being robbed and beaten. Constable Chris Gilbert and an undercover officer who cannot be publicly identified received the department's Civic Service Award at Vic PD headquarters today. The officers were off duty last week on an early morning jog when they heard a woman screaming for help at the corner of Pembroke Street and Dowler Place. The officers ran to help the woman who was being robbed and kicked on the ground by a man who appeared to have a handgun. As the two officers approached, the attacker turned the gun on them, pressing it against one of the policeman's chest.
It was difficult. It's one of those, you look back and it's very slow motion, you know, almost like a movie type script. But it worked out in the end. I was able to approach him very sheepishly with my hands up. I didn't identify myself as a police officer. I feared he would shoot me. I didn't yell out gun, acknowledging that I saw the firearm. I was fearful he would shoot me and my partner at the time, or the female who at the time was at his feet crawling away from him, bleeding from the face from the assault.
Turns out the man was armed with a pellet gun. The officers took him down. Police say the suspect is 32-year-old Joshua St. Germain, who has been charged with robbery, assault causing bodily harm, and pointing a firearm. He'll be in court in November. A Saanich police dog fended off a Rottweiler and helped to take down a domestic violence suspect on Regina Avenue last night. A woman called police when she says her boyfriend forced his way into her home drunk, armed with a steak knife. He was threatening her and her two children. When officers arrived, the man tossed the knife and released his dog in direction of the officers. That's when Taz, the Saanich PD German Shepherd you see here, sprang into action, fending off the Rottweiler and biting it several times. Police were able to take the suspect into custody. Passengers anticipating a bumpy ride on BC Transit in Greater Victoria this morning were in for a pleasant one once again. For the second straight day, job action by the Drivers and Mechanics Union has failed to disrupt the morning commute. Despite some bus drivers calling in sick and those on duty refusing to work overtime, not many runs had to be cancelled. The job action comes after a breakdown in talks between the union and BC Transit. The issue is wages, benefits, and the purchase of new shuttle buses. Meantime, BC's 3,600 paramedics and their dispatchers are the latest public sector workers to take a strike vote to leverage their contract demands. The president of the Ambulance Paramedics of BC says the union has been negotiating for 8 months with no progress. The main issues in this dispute are wages, safety, and recruiting and retaining staff. It was 43 years ago today an explosion on board HMCS Kootenay killed 9 of its crew members and injured 62 others. Kootenay was en route to Halifax when a routine engine trial went terribly wrong. There was an explosion in the engine room from the ship's starboard gear case, and it mushroomed into a massive fireball. The heavy smoke and hot gases spread quickly throughout the ship, injuring dozens and killing 9 men on board. HMCS Kootenay is known as one of the worst peacetime accidents in the Royal Canadian Navy's history. The ship's bell now sits at the CFB Esquimalt Naval and Military Museum. Well, the province is preparing for the big one, signing a deal with the Canadian Red Cross to ensure that British Columbians have backup in the event of a major disaster. The new agreement was signed in Vancouver today. The deal sets aside Red Cross emergency response units in case of a natural disaster, such as an earthquake or a flood. Up to 200 people from other parts of Canada would be called in to help the first responders, followed by teams from the U.S. and other countries.
It's one of the first of its kind in the country, actually formalizing our relationship to ensure that in the event of a disaster, there's no questions being asked about who's going to respond. We know exactly how that's going to play out, and we know that those supports will be there for us. It does mean that one of the significant changes is a seat at the planning table, but it's also in joint exercises and looking at how we prepare much better together.
The province says the partnership will not cost more, but lays out protocols and guarantees that there will be backup resources if local teams are overwhelmed. Our Member of Parliament Jim Manley is on his way home to Vancouver Island after being released from detention in Israel. The 79-year-old's wife and son are anxious to see him back home on Canadian soil. Israeli authorities arrested Manley on Saturday on board the Estelle, a ship heading to Gaza. Manley was part of a group of activists hoping to deliver supplies to the area to symbolize their opposition to the Israeli blockade. Manley's son says his dad reluctantly signed a deportation waiver to get home.
Oh, it's a huge relief. I'm glad just to see that my dad's coming home. My dad currently is on a flight from Israel to New York City, and he's going to be arriving in Toronto at Pearson International tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Jim Manley represented the former riding of Cowichan and Malahat in the Islands for 2 terms in the House of Commons in the early 1980s. A well-known Victoria couple is receiving well-earned recognition for their dedication to improving our community.
Royal Roads is honoured to present Helen Hughes for the honorary degree Doctor of Laws.
During its fall convocation today, Royal Roads University honoured Ted and Helen Hughes. Ted is a retired judge and Helen is a former Victoria City councillor. The pair has spent years working together, fighting for the rights of vulnerable children here in BC and around the world. This afternoon, Helen Hughes shared her words of inspiration with the Royal Roads class of 2012.
Walk through the open doors. The society into which you graduate needs and will benefit from the commitment of time, energy, dedication, and the expertise which each one of you has. I encourage you to always find time in your balanced life to participate in volunteerism.
Helen Hughes is the founder of Victoria's Super Bowls of Hope annual fundraiser, which is coming up, and has had extensive involvement in programs that benefit First Nations. Ted Hughes was an advocate for Greater Victoria's Coalition to End Homelessness and has led national groups, including the Canadian Hospitals Foundation. A car burst into flames in downtown Nanaimo this afternoon. Firefighters were called to Albert Street just before 5 o'clock. When the crews got there, they found a parked vehicle engulfed in smoke. Firefighters say it was an engine fire. They had to pry open the hood, smashed a window out to extinguish the flames. The car was heavily damaged. Nobody was hurt.